Hey everyone, thanks for your support in 2024. We have a lot of cool stuff coming in 2025, and here are some of the things you can look forward to as we move into next year. In the lead up to The Mandalorian and Grogu in 2026, we'll be starting a full series rewatch of both The Mandalorian and The Book of Boba Fett on exploring hyperspace lanes beginning in October. You can also expect a rewatch of Andor, and we will have reviews of every episode of Andor and the rest of the Skeleton Crew as those come out. Josie will be returning as we continue to rank every Star Wars thing released ever. Reviews of every episode of every Marvel Disney Plus show, including Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, The Eyes of Wakanda, Wonder Man, Ironheart, Daredevil Born Again, and Marvel Zombies, the day after each episode releases, will be available on Beware of Spoilers. We'll be having special event podcasts on 30-minute reviews for the Academy Awards, our 2024 year in review in early January, ranking all of Phase 5 of the MCU after Fantastic Four First Steps comes out, and our 10th anniversary special. Once we complete our rankings of all the Pokemon games on the backlog files, we'll be moving on to Kingdom Hearts and Final Fantasy. Over on the YouTube channel, you can join in for playthroughs of Mario & Luigi Superstar Saga, Pokemon White, Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Blue Rescue Team, Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories, Kingdom Hearts Recoded, Mario Golf Toadstool Tour, Sonic Adventure 2, LEGO Racers 2, LEGO Star Wars The Complete Saga, and SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom. Want to keep on top of all the new things we have coming? Subscribe at mwpnews.com, subscribe on YouTube at youtube.com/@mwpnews, or subscribe to Beware of Spoilers, 30-minute reviews, exploring hyperspace lanes, and the backlog files on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. Again, thank you for your support. Good evening. I'm going to do basically when this is going to go up. It's going to go up in the evening because I spent the morning at a transmission repair place. And I'm not thrilled, but welcome to Beware of Spoilers. I am Adam. It's been a little bit. We will get back on task. I promise we will get back on track with what we've been doing. Hopefully, fingers crossed, today's fixes a lot of the issues I've been having with my car. But we're not here to talk about that today. No, we're here today to talk about Creature Commandos, the end of the first official entry into the DC universe as helmed by James Gunn over at now over at Warner Brothers after his long stint at Marvel. And I think there's a lot of interesting. It's a mixed bag of a show, I'll say. I think that's the best way to kind of say what this show is, because I think there's good, and I enjoy, and I think that what works is kind of a lot of the minutia of the show works very well. The relationship between the various monsters, all that kind of stuff, I think works very well. I like David Harbour playing Frankenstein the way he does. I think that was a very, that was an interesting choice, and I think that they played it reasonably well. That said, the show is not perfect. I think that that's kind of the beginning and end. It's like the character moments are what work, and I think that Gunn, to an extent, we can say, I think fairly, is great at writing character moments. He's very good at that. I think this show, I don't know how much of this show he wrote because he was not the showrunner, but I think he was the writer of the show. One of the things about it is overarching, both as a introduction to this universe and bridging the gap between some of his past work in DC, that combined with how he with some of the more macro elements of the plot itself don't make a ton of sense, and I think that is kind of the weakest point of the show. I don't think that the stuff with the princess and whether or not the princess is evil was particularly well laid out. By the time you get to the end, none of that really matters. and not in a, it doesn't matter in an interesting way. It doesn't matter in a kind of a weird way, where it's like, oh, she was evil the whole time, but wait, was she? Like, are we just assuming that? There's a lot of things like that in this show, where like we're making assumptions, and I don't know if the assumptions really pay off as well as we hope they would. At the same time, we also have this issue of, the entire thing with Nina was the other big sticking point I had. Like, I don't understand why Nina was in the same facility as everyone else, where everyone else, like, Dr. Foster's backstory is like, okay, I understand why this man's in prison. The Bride, I understand why she's in prison. Like, Weasel, I understand why he's in prison. He may not have done what he was accused of, but I understand why he's in prison. G.I. Robot, understand why he's in prison. There's an interesting nuance to that. That got weirdly more interesting this past few days. And it's one of those things where it's like, as I'm watching this, like, I don't think Nina should be in that jail. And also, I think it kind of speaks to Waller not being the best at this if she thinks Nina's useful on this mission. Because if this mission is to go and protect the princess, what's Nina there for at all? Because she's not a fighter. She never has been a fighter. She's not someone who's shown in the show to be particularly scientifically gifted, so it's not even like she could fill in like the hammer role on the Thunderbolts, or the Dream Thunderbolts team where we had Sam Rockwell come back. Like, it's one of those things where it's kind of just a weird choice, and ultimately all she's there for is to die. And I guess it's okay. It's better that her death is not to, is not to motivate a guy. But is it really better if we introduce this character and then have her there only so that way she can get killed and motivate a woman to, like, it's a weird thing. Like, why would, like, I don't think that was needed, and it feels kind of like added on in a way that I don't think is necessarily, needed. And then on top of that too, it's like, if the, like, I think that final scene with the Bride shouldn't have been the Bride expositing, like, oh, you were evil the whole time and now I'm gonna kill you. Like, these characters are like, morally gray. I mean, they're not great people. I don't think I need the Bride to explain why she, like, I don't need, like, that moment at the end of the Majin Buu saga where Goku is essentially laying out the case for why he's killing Majin Buu. Like, I don't need that. I don't need that as something that's going to be on this, in this show. That doesn't do anything to help things. Like, she could have just been like, see, I don't, like, if she was just went in there like, I don't care if you were trying to take over the world. Like, I don't care about any of that. Like, I'm fucking ancient. I've seen things, I've seen empires come and go. Nothing about what you are, nothing about what you aspire to, potentially, has any impact on me. I am gonna kill you because you killed her, which is what she says, but it's giving her the moral high ground of, like, oh, you were trying to take over the world. You did want to, take over the world. But, like, why? Like, and that's the thing, too. You have a fictional country that is kind of isolationist, and you have room to do whatever you want with it. Give us a little bit of backstory as to, like, why this country has significance. Like, it's, what was it? Was it Sokovia, where it's like, Sokovia is the middle of nowhere, but it's on the way to everywhere, which is this thing where it's like, oh, it is a major passage. Like, you need to go through there if you're for trade routes. Like, it's important. It's an important area. Or maybe it wasn't Sokovia. There was one of the fictional things in Marvel, that was what the line was, is like, it is nowhere, but it's on the way to everywhere. And to an extent, that's, I need something like that for Pokolistan. There's no explanation as to why it's important or anything like that. And then the other thing that I'm curious about, morbidly curious, is how do we jive this with where this is in canon? And I talked about this the day the show premiered last month. I said, the weird thing about this show is going to be, trying to gel it and carry over parts of the old DCEU that was helmed by Walter Hamada, helmed by Zack Snyder, helmed by, all these people. That was, I don't want to say entirely maligned, because there were things that worked about it, but, it's not held in the highest regard by, by people who watched it. With the benefit of hindsight, we don't look back on that positively. So this idea that, okay, so we're going to introduce all of these characters who were in the old one with varying degrees of that being canon, it's kind of a weird choice. The closest thing I could approximate it to is the Incredible Hulk, which, up until Civil War, was, quote-unquote canon, but, not entirely canon, because it's, it was referenced in passing in the Avengers, and it's okay, so that, is there, and, Tony Stark showed up, but Tony Stark's appearance doesn't really gel with what happened in Iron Man or Iron Man 2, so let's not even talk about it too much. And then it's so it's this idea that, we're calling the Suicide Squad an imperfect memory. It's okay, but what's imperfect about it? Is the way I interpret this is, until specific events of Suicide Squad are confirmed, they're not canon. I don't think that's a great way to build your canon, though. Because what you end up with in that case is this weird situation where it's but Harley was there. Harley, who was captured by Batman. The Batman who was played by Ben Affleck. It's a situation where it's why is that why is that happening? It's are we just going to say, the imperfect memory part is that Harley wasn't there? But also, Rick Flag was there. And Waller was there. And both of them were there for that. And, Captain Boomerang was there. It's such a weird situation where it's you were probably better off just keeping Waller and keeping the characters you want, but just saying we're starting fresh. Because I think audiences can get that, because I feel like we've done that before. There was no confusion at the end of Far From Home when J. Jonah Jameson shows up. And it's J.K. Simmons reprising. There's no confusion of holy shit, it's J.K. Simmons. Is the MCU secretly the same universe as the original Spider-Man movie? No one thought that. People are familiar enough with the idea of variance that they can be okay, so it's a multiverse. This actress is playing the same character, but it's not the exact same character. But the more you bring up and the more things that specifically happen that directly reference, unless we're saying that, Suicide Squad and the Suicide Squad are not canon to each other, which is weird because they're referenced. One references the other because it's a sequel. It's such a bizarre situation, and it's intentional. It's muddying the waters in a way that feel like an unforced error. If that was the only issue, I would say that this show is probably a success, but I think that, the biggest success of the show is kind of setting up what we're looking at in terms of what the new DC universe is going to be. The biggest success of the show at the end of the day is going to be where we will have been able to look at it, and we will be able to say, okay, this is a lived-in DC universe. We have Themyscira. We have, Cersei is around and doing things. We have already people incarcerated. Batman is active and has captured Dr. Phosphorus. That's what this universe is. And I think that it's setting us on that track. If we look at it purely as that, this is a successful show. If we look at it as it's standing on its own merits or indicating the minutia of how the canon is going to work, I don't think we can make that same claim. Which is a shame. because I did enjoy, like, the minute to minute of the characters interacting is enjoyable. It's just when you get to the more macro sense, that's where you kind of lose me a little bit, and that's unfortunate. But we'll wrap up there for today. We will be back with a movie probably this week. I have to look at the schedule now that my car is working, and we will figure it out then. But until our next episode, have a great rest of your week.